Well, hello there, guys. No need for the natural light today. I've got the artificial light of the monitor here. There's a reason for that. This is supposed to be my preview video for my X-Files series that I mentioned in my favorite shows installments of the X-Files. Part 3, I think, was the one where I said I was going to do this. Where sometime in the very, very near future, I'm going to sit down and watch every episode of the series in order, and then after each one, I'm going to sit down here and basically just give my thoughts on each episode. Not reviews, not full-on, breakdown of every last piece of the episode's story or anything like that. Just my thoughts. My thoughts watching them, in 2014, my thoughts of when I watched them the first time, and the many times I've watched the series between now and then, or between then and now, I guess I should say, because I've watched all the way through the series. I'd say maybe 5 or 6 times, something like that. So, this is something I love to do. This was something I got started on maybe a year or two ago, and I just excuse me, for whatever reason or another, I just kind of petered out on it, and I was in season 3 or 4 a couple months ago the last time I watched an episode, so that's why I felt like if I'm going to do this, I may as well do it right now and go back to the beginning and for the sake of this series. Anyway, like I said, this is just supposed to be the preview video. I don't want to spend too much time. I just basically explained to you what I'm getting ready to do, but I wanted to do 2 other things in this video, a couple of things that I kind of forgot about during the other 3. Excuse me, I should have cleared my throat a little bit better before I started this. And those 2 things were, I wanted to talk a little bit about, I get asked a lot when I meet people who like the X-Files, and I say I'm an X-Files fan, and they'll be like, oh, well, have you ever seen this show? It's kind of like the X-Files. Have you ever seen that show? It's in the same vein. It's supernatural. It's spooky. It's alien-related. It's mythology. It's storyline driven. Like all kinds of shows get thrown out there when people, hear that somebody likes the X-Files or a show that's similar to it. Excuse me again. So I wanted to address a few of those shows that people often ask me about. And then I wanted to talk about some shows out there that are related to the X-Files, maybe not necessarily because of their content, but because people who are involved with the X-Files were also involved with some other shows. So, the big show that every person I ever talked to about the X-Files, at least in the last couple of years, since it's a newer show, the one show that everybody asks me about is, have you ever seen Fringe? I have not seen Fringe. I don't really have any interest in Fringe. Not knocking the show, I'm sure it's fine. People who loved it obviously loved it. It's just like any show. Whether or not the entire universe says that one show sucks, if there's somebody out there who watched it and liked it, that's fine. That's their opinion. My opinion is Fringe doesn't look like anything I would be interested in. And I know before any eagle-eyed listeners say, well, now, didn't you say the same thing in your X-Files episode? Or in your first X-Files episode, that at first the X-Files didn't really interest you, there was nothing about it that drew you in? Yes, you're right. Which is why I would probably never say never to watching Fringe, but right now it just doesn't do anything for me. It's never looked like something I could get into. So I reserve my ultimate judgment for it if I ever decide to sit down and watch it. But right now, I've never seen a single episode of it, and it's just not on my to-do list. A couple other shows that people will throw out there would be something like Supernatural, because obviously in the title of it, it deals with supernatural things. It looks interesting, but once again, just not something that I want to get into. That one probably more just because when it comes to TV in general right now, I'm not all that enthused with the idea of getting into shows, either whether they're brand new and look good, and then I watch half a season and it gets canceled, or a show that's had 5 or 7 or 10 seasons out there, and I'm not quite so sure that I want to sit down and get bogged down in yet another show to watch. I try to pick and choose what it is that I'm going to watch. There's a few shows, just throwing these out here, doesn't really have anything to do with this video, but a few shows that I'm probably going to be watching soon, or at least someday. Now, one of them's True Blood. A friend of mine's lent me a couple seasons of that, so I'm going to get started into that. Eventually, I'm going to watch Game of Thrones. I don't know. Those are just a couple things that come to mind. There's a lot of other shows that people are telling me all the time, you should watch this and watch that. And I'm never going to do it because I don't want to get so bogged down with new things to watch and new things to try to keep track of and new things to buy, because if I like a show, I'm going to buy it. It's not going to be oh, well, I guess I'll just go watch it all on Netflix and be satisfied. I like to own this stuff. So, anyway, that's that. If you could think of a show or something that you think falls in the mold of this, and if it doesn't end up in my series anyway, because there's some similar type shows that will be in my favorite TV show series once I churn through the rest of that, there may already be something you would ask about that's going to be highlighted in the series. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was the amount of really cool shows that people who were involved with the X-Files, and I'm talking about like writers, directors, producers, etc., not necessarily the actors part of it, but the people who wrote, directed, and produced, and had something to do with bringing this show to the air. So many of those people, some a little bit beforehand, but so many of them went from X-Files into pretty amazing careers. So I've cheated a little bit here, but I'm doing research for this one a little bit more. I have a bunch of Wikipedia pages open here, and I'm going to just kind of click through these and cover some names who were important to the X-Files and then went on to do other great work. And this first one's going to harken back to Supernatural. But Kim Manners was a director for several episodes of the X-Files. In fact, according to this, he directed 52. He had essentially 201 episodes, so he directed a quarter of the episodes of the X-Files. After that, he directed a couple of things here that I don't really know. Alaska Empire over there. But I guess his last claim to fame, because sadly he passed away in 2009 due to cancer. But he directed 16 episodes of Supernatural from 2005 to 2008. Yeah. So, like I said, that was pretty sad. I heard about him dying, like that was the year after the I Want to Believe movie came out. I don't remember if he had any involvement in that. Guess I should have looked at that a little closer. But anyway, let's move on to the next one. The next guy on this list is Rob Bowman. He's one who in particular has credits from before X-Files, and it's part of another one of my favorite TV shows, but he contributed to Star Trek The Next Generation. I'm not really sure here. Let's see, it says... Looks like he directed, I'm going to say, during the first season. But it's mostly the X-Files and afterwards that he's known for me. He directed 4 feature films. Airborne, he directed the first X-Files movie. He directed the movie Reign of Fire, which I've never seen. And then he directed Elektra, which I did see. And the biggest claim to fame for me on him is that he directed... he's an executive producer for another show on my favorite TV shows list, which is Castle. So he's involved in Castle, which is awesome for me because that's something that's still current and ongoing, so I can still enjoy his work. I've got one here who was big with the X-Files. After X-Files, he did Torchwood, Miracle Day, and Hell on Wheels. Okay, I remember Hell on Wheels. That's something newer. But his name is John Shiban or Shaban or Shiban. I don't know. I wish I could track it down how to pronounce his name. But he did a lot of episodes of the X-Files in seasons 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, from 3 until the end, he wrote or did the story and even directed some episodes of the X-Files. So his is a name and a face that I recognize quite often. I'm going to save this guy for the last. He's probably the biggest story to come out of it afterwards. Next guy on this list is Howard Gordon. I picked up on him mainly because he's been involved with the TV show Homeland. It's on Showtime. He was a co-developer of it. He was a supervising producer and co-wrote several scripts on episodes of the X-Files, along with this name here, Alex Ganza. So anyway, some of these are just names I recognize from the credits. Some of them are people I've actually seen interviews with and recognize their faces. I'm going to jump over here to James Wong, who was a producer early episodes of the X-Files. Later he did Space Above and Beyond, Millennium, which is another Chris Carter series. Chris Carter, who created the X-Files. And presently is a writer and co-executive producer on American Horror Story, a show I don't know much about other than the fact that each season is a different story with different people in it. And I like the fact that James Wong, they named a character in the X-Files PC game, James Wong. I believe it was James Wong. I think that was kind of like a nod towards the guy. All right, now we're going to move on to Daryl Morgan, who is a big writer on the X-Files. He wrote the episode Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose. It says his teleplay for it. And he was a younger brother of another writer and director on the series, Glenn Morgan. They both had a lot of experience in the show. He was also, Daryl Morgan was also cast in the show as Fluke Man. The host, yeah. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. That was the name of the episode, was The Host. I think he was also in another episode. Yeah, he had a guest appearance later on an episode called Small Potatoes, where he played a very cool character, and we'll talk about that when I get to that particular episode. Daryl Morgan has done... He was briefly a consulting producer on a show that got canceled early called Bionic Woman. It was the remake of Bionic Woman in 2008. I really loved the show. I wish it would have continued on. And he's also was a consulting producer with Fringe, so he had a hand in that one. Glenn Morgan, his brother, also producer, writer, director, did a lot of work on the X-Files, Millennium, Space Above and Beyond, the Final Destination movie series, The One. Also was going to be a part of Bionic Woman, but left due to creative differences, is what it says. Then we're going to mention these last two. Frank Spotnitz, who was a writer and producer, best known, of course, for his work on the X-Files. Let's see, he did a lot of episodes from season 2 to 9. He was also the co-writer of the I Want to Believe movie with Chris Carter. He worked on Millennium, Night Stalker, which was a reboot of Kolchak the Night Stalker, which was a show that was a major influence on the X-Files and Chris Carter. Also has worked on a show called Hunted, but I don't know what that's from. A BBC show, apparently. Okay, and then I saved the best for last. And I say this just due to the critical acclaim that this guy's gotten for his most recent show. I haven't got to see this show yet, but I do own the first season on Blu-ray. Eventually I'll pick it all up and watch it all. But anyway, we're talking about Vince Gilligan, if you hadn't already kind of guessed it, if you're in the know about these kinds of things. Vince Gilligan is the creator, head writer, and executive producer of Breaking Bad. What a lot of people call one of the best films, one of the best shows, if not the best show to come out in a long, long time. That just wrapped up recently after a couple seasons, like 6, I think. It had that weird break of like a part 1 and a part 2, and then they didn't know what to call it as far as a season was concerned. There was some controversy over that with Netflix or somebody like that. Amazon, I'm not sure. Anyway, Vince Gilligan did a lot of work on the X-Files. Let's see if it says. He was, yeah, here we go. He went on to write 29, 30 episodes total, co-executive producer of 44 episodes, executive producer of 40, co-producer of 24, and supervising producer of 20. He also co-created and became executive producer of the spin-off series The Lone Gunman, which I showed off in my in one of the videos where I was showing off all of my stuff. And then he created Breaking Bad. He's got other work that's coming up. There's a spin-off prequel called Better Call Saul. Excuse me, and a lot of other stuff too. So anyway, yeah, like he's probably the big name that everybody thinks about now because of Breaking Bad's exposure and how good it was. And like I said, I'll be very excited to finally get to watch that one. Okay, so this went on a lot longer than I expected, but whatever. I just wanted to talk about some things I forgot to mention before and explain what I'm going to be doing with this series. And it should kick off within the next few days. I'm going to try to watch episodes and do the videos on days when I have, like, either on my days off and my daughter's at school, or on the days that I work and come home and she's not here, because she doesn't like the series, and it's probably a little too heavy for younger kids anyway. So I guess that's about it. Thanks a lot for watching this silly little video. We'll see you very soon with the first episode of The X-Files.